You know, this song came to major prominence after Farmer Ted sang it to Molly Ringwald in the car in the famous scene 16 Candles, and he basically almost ruined the song for the rest of us. But we said earlier today that in a previous podcast or earlier this week that the Beatles probably started Christian rock. Well, the Beatles probably started children's rock because this is a children's song. It's called Birthday. And it's so fun, but it's so bizarre. The most beautiful bride in the Beatles sang on the song, Pattie Boyd. Put it this way, no wonder Eric Clapton and George Harrison wrote songs about her. She was built like a brick shithouse. And the ugliest, besides Maureen, member of the band's Decollage, Yoko, sang backup. Now, Birthday is a song by the Beatles from their 68 double album, The Beatles, also known as the White Album. George Martin didn't want a double album. And, and Paul McCartney said, shut up, it's the White Album, just shut up. Now, it's a very interesting song because it's very, very quick. It was recorded on one day, 18th of September 68, and came out in the White Album 2 months later. Now, written by Lennon McCartney, mainly by McCartney, is the opening track on the third side of the LP, or the second disc and CD versions of the record. Surviving Beatles Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr performed it for the Star's 17th birthday at Radio City Music Hall on July 7, 2010. Now, contrary to popular belief, it falls under the hard rock and roll categories according to Wikipedia, but I think it's a children's rock song because that's what kids would sing. Anyway, the song was largely written during a recording session EMI on September 18th by Lennon and McCartney. McCartney said, we thought, why not make something up? So we got a riff going and arranged it around this riff. So that's 50-50 John and me, made up on the spot, and recorded all in the same evening. During the session, the Beatles and the recording crew made a short trip around the corner to McCartney's house to watch the 56 rock and roll movie The Girl Can't Help It, which is being shown for the first time on British TV, because it was banned, don't you know. After the movie, they returned to record The Birthday. Now, George Martin was away, so his assistant Chris Thomas produced the session. His memory is that the song was mostly McCartney's. Paul was the first one, and he was playing the birthday riff. Eventually, the others arrived, and by the time Paul had literally written the song, right there in the studio, everyone in the studio sang in the chorus, and it was 5 a.m. by the time the final mono mix was completed. How it worked back then, you would record in stereo, do a mono mix so he would push it down, but the stereo mix of Birthday is tremendous. Now, in the infamous Playboy interview in 1980, John Lennon said, Birthday was written in the studio, just made up on the spot. I think Paul wanted to write a song like Happy Birthday Baby, the old 1950s hit. But it was sort of made up in the studio. It was a piece of garbage. I don't think it's a piece of garbage. It's funny as hell. Birthday begins with an intro drum fill that moves directly into a blues progression in A, in the form of a guitar riff doubled by the bass, with McCartney singing at the top of his chest voice with Lennon on a lower harmony. After this section, a drum break lasting 8 measures brings the song in the middle section, which rests entirely on the dominant. A repeat of the blues progression guitar riff instrumental section, augmented by piano, brings the song into a bridge before returning to a repeat of the first vocal section, this time accompanied by piano. Now, coinciding with the 50th anniversary release, Jacob Stallworthy of The Independent listed Birthday as number 17 in his ranking of the White Album's 30 tracks. He wrote of the song, the opening to the second half of the album treads familiar Beatles ground with an improvised riff that could be the record's biggest earworm. Hilariously, Lennon would go on to call the song garbage. The song is not garbage. John Lennon was more of a bullshit artist like Pete Townsend. He would put down his own work, and the reason why he called it garbage, because Paul McCartney came up with the idea before he did it. Lennon sometimes was jealous of Paul McCartney because Paul McCartney could write anything, while Lennon was the angry middle-aged man by the time he died. According to the book accompanying the 2018 box set, The Beatles Super Deluxe version, the annotation on the tape box from the session offers an alternative lineup that explodes amidst of who played what. Paul McCartney, lead vocal, bass, and piano. John Lennon, vocals and guitar. George Harrison, guitar and tambourine. Ringo Starr on drums and hand claps. Now, Pattie Boyd, of course, can't say Pattie Boyd would say beautiful lady on backing vocal. Yoko Ono, the woman that didn't break up the Beatles, but the woman that bored the fuck out of their fans on backing vocal, with Mal Evans on hand claps. Now, ironically, Paul McCartney released a live version of the song on October 8, 1990 in the UK, with a US release, albeit only as a cassette, on 16th of October. Originally appearing on Trip in the Live Fantastic, the single went 29 in the UK and number 3 in Italy. The B side was a live version of Good Day Sunshine. McCartney also released a 12-inch single and CD single with those songs and 2 more live tracks, P.S. Love Me Do and Let Him In. P.S. Love Me Do is a combination of P.S. I Love You and Love Me Do, sort of like a combination track. Now, the single was released on the 9th of October 1990 and the 16th of October 1990 in the States on Parlophone and Capitol. Again, songwriters Lennon and McCartney. Canada won 89, Europe won 75, Ireland 22, Italy at number 3, Musica e Dici, Netherlands 68, UK 29, and US mainstream rock, which I would consider brace alternative, is 35. Other versions: Underground Sunshine recorded a song as a single in 69. The version was a minor hit in the States, reaching number 19 on the Cashbox chart, number 26 on Billboard, and number 35 in Canada. Now, the great Paul Weller covered a song for McCartney's 70th birthday, which I think was, 15 years ago? 14 years ago? The version, 13 years ago. This version was available for download on June 18, 2012, for one day only. Even with this limited mode of distribution, the track reached number 64 in the UK singles charts, which included downloads. Now, by this time, ladies and gentlemen, Yoko was pretty well ingrained into the Beatles. Pattie Boyd was still kind of the muse of George Harrison and indirectly Eric Clapton. But Pattie, by the time the White Album came along, members of the band, not Linda Eastman, but members of the band or their associates like Mal Evans, God bless his soul, even he ended up producing for Kate Moon, they were a part of it. Now, Pattie Boyd, to my knowledge, I think that was one of the few times she participated in a Beatles track. Somebody could, and she's still living, so if I ever had the chance to ask her, I would ask her that exactly, how many she sang on. Now, she's been very happy the last number of years, and she met developer Rod Weston in 91. It's almost her silver anniversary. At one point, he got married in 2015, and I guess she's been very happy in what is considered for her semi-retirement from modeling and everybody else. Now, she was married to Clapton for 10 years as well. At the time, I can't even say it, 5'6", blonde, eyes of blue. I fell in love with Pattie Boyd when she was hard day's night. She was trying to grab George Harrison by the head. Now, there's an autobiography that she put out in 2007 called Wonderful Today, co-written with journalist and broadcaster Penny Junot. Retitled Wonderful Today, George Harrison, Eric Clapton and Me for the U.S. market. The book contains many of Boyd's photographs. Most of the members of the Beatles and their entourage were great photographers. She carried out interviews to promote the release. At the time, she was said to be looking forward to the idea of her book, competing against Clapton's autobiography, which was published concurrently. Clapton disagreed with some of the details in her account, but said, "We each have our different versions of our years together." Now, Wonderful Today, reviewed by Lynn Barber, The Daily Telegraph, a very good reviewer, described it as absolutely gripping, and a memoir that gives more insight into the weirdness of rock star life than anything I have read. In the States, the book debuted at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. Now, I don't know if it's out of print, but if you can find it, it kind of talks about the making of Birthday, because Pattie Boyd, like I said, she had her own career, and it's funny, like we've done, the series about Joan Crawford and Fosse. We've never really done a Beatles series, or we call it Beatles Wives. Now, I don't think George Harrison or Eric Clapton really, knew her like she wanted to be known by the public. She was a very private person. She would rarely give interviews with the press. And I don't think there's even an interview with her with the BBC or CBC past her relationship with Harrison, if anybody can find it. But I'd like to ask her right out exactly why that song Birthday has been kind of overlooked. It's a beautiful song. It's very fun. You say it's your birthday, it's my birthday too, yeah. Well, like I said, that's a drunk band at a bar. Let's have a drink together. That's what I'm hearing there. So, Paul McCartney hit it out of the park with this. The only negative was I don't like Yoko Ono. I don't even like the Bare Naked Lady song, Be My Yoko Ono. So, that's just me. Does that bother you? Well, it bothers me. That's why I don't like Yoko Ono. You know, I believe in peace, but the only good thing she ever did was pose by a Montreal Canadian jersey when John was holding up during his visit to Montreal back in the bed piece years. So, Sorry, I'm just doing a cover there. All rights reserved. If you like what we're doing with our Beatles podcast, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share.